3,000 villages in Spain are empty, and one more joins that list every week. I've seen what happens when the last villager leaves. Now, I wanted to find the places which were trying to survive. So I drove deep into the mountains of Jaén. I found empty schools, silent towns, ruined villages. But then I met the remarkable people who are fighting for their community's survival.
We live here because we are the resistance.
So let's start right at the beginning. A few weeks ago, I drove deep into the mountains of southern Spain's Sierra de Segura with a good friend of mine, Becky.
We wanted to explore one of Spain's least populated municipalities, Santiago Pontones.
My research had told me that this municipality was suffering from some of the worst depopulation in the whole of Andalusia. In my lifetime alone, this municipality has lost more than 80% of its population.
At its peak, over 15,000 people lived here. Now it's more like 2,700. Entire villages have disappeared. Schools have closed.
Every year, more people leave in search of opportunities elsewhere. We started our journey in the town of Santiago de la Espada, the administrative centre of Santiago Pontones, a vast municipality spread over mountains and valleys and forests, which encompasses more than 100 small villages and hamlets.
The town is, by many accounts, dying. The population is ageing rapidly. In 1980, the first year of the primary school had 52 children in it, but today, that same year group has just 10. The altitude is about the same as Ben Nevis, the very highest point in the British Isles. Winters are brutal. Temperatures drop well into the negative. The people who live here have always had to be tough, resourceful, and willing to work with very little. As we wandered through the streets, the silence was only broken by birdsong, running water, and bells. Life, where we did see it, reminded me of an era that has long been left behind on the busy, familiar coasts and cities. I knew that the area was famous for sheep farming and, well, for being part of the biggest nature reserve in Spain, Las Sierras de Corozola, Segura y Las Villas. Traditional sheep herding here goes back for centuries. It shaped the landscape. Shepherds founded many of the villages. Over the next couple of days, Becky and I explored the municipality. We followed winding roads deep into the valleys. We followed the valley of the river Zumeta. We visited the source of the Segura, the vital river that winds its way down through Murcia to the coast. We stopped wherever we spotted an isolated hamlet, wherever we saw signs of life. But the further we travelled, the more I noticed the silence and distant ruins. Again and again, we arrived somewhere that looked like it should be full of life and found almost nobody there.
We'd come looking for people, but instead we just kept finding silence. Before we'd set off, I'd spent hours searching Google Earth for signs of the small aldeas and cortijos to visit, but as we set off, winding up the mountain road towards them, well, we quickly found that our route was impassable.
Recent storms had damaged many of the roads in the area. Even some of the more significant routes showed signs of fresh rockfalls. The only cars we passed were marked with the logos of the local government. And eventually, we hit a dead end.
So yeah, we've been driving for hours right out into the middle, literally the middle of the mountains. I was hoping to be able to get further up this road to go and look at some abandoned kind of little cortijos and aldeas that I could see on Google Maps, but on Google Earth. But it was at this point. Can't go any further, apparently. The road is being worked on and it says strictly nobody is allowed without permission.
We had no choice but to turn back. At the time, it was frustrating, but, well, in hindsight, I realised that we'd just been searching for the wrong story.
In the evening, we stopped in the village of Goldines. The ruins here are testament to a dark part of the region's history. The huge natural park of the Sierras de Corozola, Segura y Las Villas hadn't always been a nature reserve. In fact, much of it had first been emptied of its population forcibly as Franco sought to turn the area into a huge hunting ground. Goldines was one of the towns which was in Franco's way. The residents were forced out of their homes and into neighbouring towns like Santiago. To make sure that they didn't come back, the buildings were destroyed. The hamlet was rendered uninhabitable. Each one of these ruins represents a family uprooted against their will. Together, they represent the destruction not just of a village, but of an entire community. Walking around the destroyed buildings in Goldines was a stark reminder that it wasn't only the difficulty of living in such a remote location that resulted in depopulation. Sometimes the challenges come from powerful people a long way away. By the time we reached the town of Hornos, we'd crossed much of the municipality. The village clings dramatically to the mountainside above the reservoir below. From the castle walls, the forest stretched to the horizon. It's undoubtedly beautiful, but as we wandered the town in the morning, we found a town that felt like it should be bustling, but was eerily quiet. In many ways, well, it felt to me like a time capsule. The local shop reminded me of the kinds of shop I used to see on the coast as a kid, long before supermarkets arrived in the area. Later that afternoon, we continued south towards Corzola, and it was there, over lunch, that a chance conversation changed the direction of the trip.
Bueno, a ver, en la cantera donde yo vivo,
Sí.
que está ahí arriba, hay una escuela abandonada.
¿Y lejos de aquí?
No, está aquí a nada, 2 minutos. Ya te
muy bien.
digo.
So we decided to head up there and take a look, but before I show you what we found, here's a quick message from this video's sponsor.
One of the things that makes these videos possible is the fact that I can speak Spanish. Without it, there's just no way I'd be able to come to these places, meet the kind of people we've been meeting and share their stories with you. But even after all these years, there are still things that I want to improve, especially when it comes to my pronunciation and grammar. My lifestyle's also pretty chaotic. I'm always flying to and fro between the UK and different areas of Spain. And so I need a way of learning that's flexible and that I can fit around my daily life. That's why I'm pleased to have partnered with Rosetta Stone in order to make this video possible. What I really like about using Rosetta Stone is it doesn't make you rely on memorizing lists and tables and things like that. Instead, it uses an immersive approach. You learn through context, connecting words and images naturally, much like the way you learn your own language. Even at a higher level, the pronunciation features are really useful. They compare the way you speak to native speakers and gives you instant feedback. That way, you can very quickly learn where you're making your mistakes and improve the way you're speaking.
Hermano.
Thanks to that true accent technology, I'm already improving my pronunciation. The flexibility is what makes it really work for me. The lessons are short and you can fit them in wherever you are, whether you're traveling, on a plane, in a hotel, or even out in the mountains somewhere like this. I can look at them on my laptop, on my mobile. You can even download them so you can use them when you're offline. And it's not just Spanish. You get access to 25 different languages which you can learn. And well, that's going to open the door for me to spread my travels even further in the future. So if you're thinking about learning a language or even improving one you already speak, I thoroughly recommend checking this out. I've put a link in the description and in a pinned comment for you to check out. Now, I'd just like to say this video could not have been made without the partnership with Rosetta Stone. And I'd like to thank Rosetta Stone for making it possible.
So we headed up to the school to take a look. The site hit me harder than I had expected, because this wasn't ancient history. This wasn't a ruined village reclaimed by nature. This felt recent. A school that no longer had enough children to remain open. Standing there, I realized something. I'd spent days looking at the consequences of depopulation, the empty villages, the aging population, the abandoned buildings, but I hadn't met the people who were fighting to stay. And, well, that's when the story changed. Becky and I continued our journey south to Olive Country. You'll see more about what we got up to in a future video, but I wasn't yet done with Santiago Pontones. A week later, I came back. This time, I wasn't looking for abandoned villages. I was looking for the people behind the story. I'd met a lovely lady, Victoria, in Corzola. She'd kindly given me some contacts to reach out to, and one man's name had kept coming up: Rodri. Rodri is a shepherd. He comes from a family who've been sheep herding in these mountains for generations. He's somebody who's deeply invested in the future of this region, and as you're going to see, well, he had a remarkable story to tell. I met him at his farm. He was working with the very flock of sheep whose bloodline stretches back through generations of his family. As we sat beneath a tree overlooking the valley, he began explaining the history of his family and, well, in many ways, the history of the region itself.
So it's your parents' family farm?
Yeah.
For how many generations?
I don't know. all my generation
Yeah.
before us having agriculture or have a farming livestock. The history say that the first people here was the shepherd, came from the north of Spain. there is more a little part of the north here in Andalusia. It's a little north in the south.
Listening to him, one thing surprised me. Despite his deep connection to these lands, Rodri had left. He'd studied to become a nurse, he'd worked in London, he'd travelled the world, he'd worked with children in Africa, he'd worked in intensive care. He'd built a life away from these mountains. He'd experienced things that, well, his ancestors could only have imagined. I asked him why he'd left.
Me and my sister always have to listen for my parents. You have to listen, go to university, you have to get a grade and live in a city. You will work under the roof with no freezing, no snow.
Yeah. What struck me was that nobody had forced Rodri to leave. His parents simply had wanted what all good parents want for their children: a better life, an education, opportunity, a future beyond the hardships that they had known themselves. Later, I heard almost an identical story when I spoke to José Lara and Rocio, their brother and sister.
Al contrario de lo que se esperaba todo el mundo, incluso nuestra familia, que siempre pensaban que íbamos a formarnos, íbamos a estudiar para hacer nuestra vida fuera de aquí, porque aquí no había futuro, nosotros decidimos regresar.
I'd arrived expecting to hear a story about people leaving. And yet I kept finding people who'd done the exact opposite. Rodri had left, travelled the world, worked abroad, built a life, and yet he'd chosen to come back. I asked him why.
I have never cut my umbilical cord with this.
No.
Even when I was living in London or working in a hospital, I used to double shift to get days off. Yeah. To came back here to do the lambing, to help my father. Yeah. My father was to be retired, to sell off all the sheep. The sheep are genetical daughter of the sheep of my grandparent. Right. And if my father closed the farm, it's going to disappear forever.
That's it.
Yeah. And I left everything and came back to my house here. And I'm happy to be here. I have not a single moment to regret of this decision.
When I asked José Lara and Rocio the same question, well, I got a remarkably similar answer.
Decidimos volver aquí a nuestra aldea, así que empezamos a invertir en unas casas rurales para dar alojamiento a los visitantes de la zona, y también continuamos con el negocio familiar, que era una panadería que montaron en el año 89 mi padre y mi tío.
These weren't people that were trapped here. These were people who had options. These were people who'd experienced a life beyond these mountains, and yet they'd chosen this place. Their parents had believed that the grass was greener on the other side, but these guys had been there, they'd seen it. Well, they did not agree. This was when I realised that this wasn't a story about people choosing to leave, it was a story about people choosing to come back. These weren't people who were here for a sense of obligation, they wanted to be here. But now that they'd returned, they all seemed to take on a responsibility for saving what they had. And not just for themselves. Throughout my conversations with Rodri, with José Lara, with Rocio, a central theme kept returning: community.
Aquí estamos en una zona rural, en una zona de montaña. Siempre ha sido necesario la solidaridad. Entonces, esa solidaridad que siempre se ha mantenido aquí, pues por suerte se sigue manteniendo todavía. Entonces, siempre tienes un vecino que te puede echar una mano con cualquier cosa que necesites, que te conoce, que como pase algún día sin saber de ti, pues ya se está preocupando y está viendo a ver si estás bien, si necesitas algo.
In a community where the population is so thinly spread, where the nearest hospital is 2 hours away, where there's an hour's drive through mountain roads in all directions before you reach the next reasonably sized town, well, people have to look out for each other. But while caring for each other may have been born out of necessity, it's become part of this community's nature. But of course, community and goodwill alone is not enough to keep a village alive. People need work. Increasingly, locals are looking at tourism as part of the solution to their problems. But in a country where the excesses of mass tourism are now so topical, I wanted to know what people locally feel about it.
Nosotros no queremos que vengan aquí miles de personas o cientos de personas a llegar a verse 4 cervezas y irse. No, nosotros queremos que el turismo ayude a sostener la población de la zona. Entonces tiene que ser algo más paulatino, más constante, de mayor calidad, que se incluya en el entorno, no que vengan a comer o a beber y a irse.
Sí. Nosotros somos conscientes de los problemas que la masificación turística está causando y ha causado en otras zonas, incluso de naturaleza, no solamente de costa. Pero creemos que esos problemas aquí es muy difícil que se den. Aquí, por la propia situación geográfica que tenemos, por las distancias, por cómo está distribuido el territorio y la población, no creemos que se vayan a dar ese tipo de problemas, o es muy difícil. En cambio, el problema de la despoblación sí que es un problema real.
And on my trip, I'd seen the signs of a very different type of tourism to that which you find on the coast. The Cosmolarium in Hornos, a place that celebrates some of the darkest skies in Europe. The wildlife park in Collado de Almendral, celebrating and protecting the wildlife of the nature reserve. But even tourism has its limits. No matter how hard individuals work, some things can only be provided collectively. I'd seen the hundreds of kilometres of roads, the struggling schools. I was well aware that managing a community the size of Santiago Pontones would be far less cost-effective than looking after a municipality that's centred around a single population area. This inevitably brings us to politics. And, well, this is the point where I need to reveal the most fascinating thing about Rodri's story. He's not only a shepherd, he's not only a nurse. Rodri is the current elected mayor of Santiago Pontones.
All my life, since I was a child in the school, I'm very reivindicative. That's the reason I became the mayor. I didn't want to be in a big party. Well, they tell you what you have to think, what you have to do. I'm in an independent party, small party, for Jaén, to defend our way of life. The big party have no the recept to manage bills like this.
But where there are cities, there are people. Where there are people, there are votes. So when you go to a large city, or a large party, a national party, they're focused on that. That's their.
That's all around
their
the
thing.
world. I imagine it's all around the world.
It is.
The big party only care about the votes.
Yeah.
José Lara and Rocio expanded upon that idea.
Los territorios son totalmente diferentes entre ellos.
Eso es,
Este municipio, ahora que lo estás conociendo y tú que conoces muchos de España, te darás cuenta que aunque algunos puede que tengan problemáticas similares, pero cada uno tiene las suyas propias y las conocen solamente a ellos. Son las administraciones locales las que mejor pueden dar soluciones a los problemas de cada municipio.
The people who understand these mountains best are the people who live in them. They need to be listened to, not dictated to from above.
The money we have from the government of Spain or Andalusia depend on the population. I say you have to pay as well for the building of a municipality. It's not the same that you live in a small town, but all in the same.
Yeah.
That when you live in 100 little village.
Yeah.
And that raises a difficult question. Don't simple economic forces show that, well, communities like this are no longer viable in the modern age? Rodri was very clear about this.
The people is part of the environment because have developed with the man.
Yeah.
When you take away the man, it's not substantial. The shepherd we are who manage and who prevent the big fire. You need something here to clean the grass, to maintain the forest. We have to be recognized what we are doing here.
Yeah.
We are working for this. We are in the Sonia. This environment, this forest, is not only for us.
No.
It's for all the world.
The people living here are not simply living in the landscape. They're part of it. The sheep graze vegetation that would otherwise become fuel for forest fires. The people maintain tracks, water systems, infrastructure. The forests surrounding these villages may appear wild, but they're not separate from the people who live amongst them. Human beings are part of the ecosystem here. If they're removed, then a delicate balance would be undone. the repercussions of that, economic, practical and ecological, would be felt well beyond this municipality. Rodri then explained an idea that he thinks would allow that value to secure the future of this municipality. It's an idea that is so simple that I cannot believe that I've never heard about it before.
There is a market for the carbon credit. One tree can fix to underground a lot of carbon, and you have to certificate. Yeah. You are filtrate carbon, and you can be paid for this. Right. If we get to be certificate and be paid for it, we have money enough to cover all the.
That's a fantastic idea.
I'm fighting for this. We need to be recognized for this and be paid for it and have money, not to be Switzerland. We only fight to have the minimum.
When I was visiting Sonia last year, a guy said to me that when the government spends money in cities, they call it an investment. When they spend it rurally, they call it an expense. Now that seems to me to be deeply unfair. The people here, by maintaining the environment, vast land masses which are publicly owned, provide a service that benefits the wider community. The cities put carbon out. This community captures it. They're not asking for handouts, they're not asking for riches, they're just asking to be recognised for the service that they provide to the wider community and, well, for the very basics that they need for their community to survive. Healthcare, education, opportunity, enough to give the next generation a reason to stay. So before I left, I asked one last question. Is it already too late?
It's not too late for us.
No.
It's not too late for us. Maybe if it follow like this in 10, 15 years, it's too late. But not now.
Not now.
No.
You have the chance now to stop it.
Yeah.
Even if it doesn't, even if you're not talking about repopulation, you're talking about stopping that decline.
Me and people like me, we live here because we are the resistance.
So there you have it. Santiago Pontones really is one of the most incredible communities I have ever met in, well, one of the most beautiful landscapes I've ever seen. It's well worth a visit. I've put links in the description below to the places where I've stayed. Now, thank you so much to everybody there who helped get this video together, and of course to Rosetta Stone for making the video possible in the first place, and to you guys for watching. This channel is growing well, but I'm trying as hard as I can to get videos out more often. It would be a huge help to me if you could like this video and subscribe to the channel. There's some exciting things coming in the future, and well, I'd love to be able to get them to you quicker. So thank you again for watching. I look forward to seeing you in the next one.